Okay, good morning, everybody. It is Valentine's Day. It's Wednesday, February 14th, 2024. It is Hey Adar Aleph, Hatafshin Pei Daled. I'm Reva Emunah, recording live from Tzfat via the Zoom. And today we are in Rivkah Emeinu, part 3. All of these series have been based upon the teachings of Harav Nir Menussi and this sefer called Zot Olah, the feminine through the lens of Torah, specifically through the lens of Kabbalah and Chassidut, or the inner light teachings. This book is, or has even already been translated into English, but I believe it's still undergoing editing, but it will be out in English. But I feel that these teachings are so important and so healing and can help so many that it feels like a chaval to wait. So please God, we'll get word when the sefer is actually out in English. Okay, so we last time in Rivkah Emeinu part 1 and part 2, we really went over the text from Torah, from Chumash, with all these different references to Rivkah Emeinu from the text, so we could get sort of a foundational sense of how, like an actor entering the stage, how they enter, what impression they give, what's their energy, what's their mission, what's their message, what's their body language, what's their tone, right? Okay, so I'm just gonna take a sip of water. We are in the week of Shiva for our dear brother, Moish Geller, and celebrating his graduation, getting his wings, and transitioning. So this is for the delight of Moish's neshama, and for all that he did for so many neshamas in this last Gilgul. And yeah, may his light keep shining out brighter and brighter, and truer and truer. Okay. So we begin with this pasuk because, hi, Rachel Bracha, good morning. Wow, perfect timing. We're just about to give the opening line. Okay. Keshoshana bein hachochim, kain rayati ben habanot. So, as a rose amongst the thorns, so is my beloved. It's talking to the feminine, right? This is the masculine talking to the feminine. So is my beloved amongst the other women, right? Amongst the daughters. And that is from Shir Shirim, Bet. So that's from Song of Songs, the 2nd chapter and the 2nd verse of the 2nd chapter. So it's beginning with this pasuk, partially because it's telling you that this pasuk is in some way deeply hinting to Rivkah Emeinu. Okay. כאשר ערב אחד, לעת צאת השואבות. So it starts like a fairy tale. So one evening, when it was the time for when the water bearers used to go out, right, to water the cattle, Bisha'at dimedumim, right, and right, this is twilight, right? So it's bein hashmashot. In other words, it's not the time of consciousness, and it's not the time of total darkness and not having consciousness. It's a time of transition. This is what Chazal is telling us. It's a time of transition from the light into here it's from the light into the darkness. הגיע למחזותיה שליח ממשפחה רחוקה. Okay, so now comes היה זה מפגש של דומה בדומה, שתי נשמות של חסד המזהות אחת את השנייה ממרחק ונשאבות זה אל זה. Okay, so what he's doing here, Nir Menussi, is he's giving you the director's notes that here's a script and it's Padan Aram and it's twilight time. And there's a young girl who's coming out to water the cattle. And there's a man, and that's Eliezer, right? The faithful servant of Avraham Avinu, Eliezer, Demashek, Dolev, right? But he's saying, if you look in the director's notes at the side of the script, what's really happening behind the scenes, like what's the energetic intention in the scene, what's really happening is that two souls of chesed who live amongst souls who are not yet able to access the energy center of loving kindness for themselves and for other creatures. Amongst them, Eliezer and Rivkah recognize, they find resonance in each other, that they are both vibrating on the frequency of the house of Avraham, which is the frequency of loving kindness towards themselves, which is the Be'er, right? That's the inner well. And from that well, we sho'ev, right? This is what Rivkah is coming to do, dip her vessel into her own infinite well of true self, Shechina, Atma, right? From within herself, and sho'avot, right? And be in loving service to help others connect to their own God well that dwells inside of them, right? And Eliezer is called Mashke Eliezer, right? Eliezer de Mashek, like Mashke, right? Like waters, also drinks, to give drinks. So they recognize immediately that these are both souls who came into this world and this Gilgul to develop their inner well springs, right? To have access to true self within them. God as God dwells within them, and strengthen that connection. And then understand that from that place, now they have an infinite ability to help other souls also find that within themselves, because they're not drawing from limited wells of their limited identifying well. They're drawing from the well of infinite love and infinite power and infinite strength and infinite compassion and infinite presence. So they're recognizing each other. Okay, that's what's happening. V'nishavot ze el zu, and there's this magnetic attraction between them, between these two souls that are souls of loving kindness, and also loving kindness. They have the secret of the house of Avram Avinu, which is to be loving and kind to all the parts, to be loving and kind to the whole process, to have emunah for the whole process, and to have compassion on every part of us as we're moving through this process, and to keep encouraging the growth and the healing and the elevation. Okay, so they're attracted to each other because they're both on this frequency. Hashaliach Haya Eliezer, right? So the one who's on a mission is Eliezer. And of course, what's his mission? His mission, good morning. This is so wonderful. His mission is to recognize Yitzchak Avinu's other half, right? The vessel for the light of Yitzchak Avinu, okay? Avdo haknaani shel Avraham ha'ivri, the non-Jewish, right? The Knani servant of Avraham Avinu, okay? So every piece of information we are being told is the story of how soulmates come together, because that's what's happening in this story. And that's nice, but let's go higher. It's not just the story of soulmates and Olam of Asiya. These are Geula maps. These are the stories of how unity happens inside you, how healing happens inside of you. Before we take it so big to like, oh, Am Yisrael and the world and soulmates, amazing. But first know it's going to happen in you, that there's going to be an experience of integration of divine feminine and divine masculine and acceptance and love, and a feeling that you have inner divine parents that have wisdom, that you can ask them all the time and draw from that, and they'll give you the encouragement, and that human parents could not give you. Guess what? By design, they didn't screw up. It's actually part of the design, because how do we know? Because even the avot and the imahot couldn't give it to their children, and they're basically perfection. Adam and Chava couldn't give it to their children, and again, pretty darn near to perfection. So guess what? Haha, it's been part of the plan the whole time. Okay, that's why now we know that attachment theory is not the truest truth, that you must have gotten it from your parents or in childhood in order to later have access to this inner self and this inner wholeness and an integration of knowing how to live in this world and how to live a beautiful, healthy, meaningful life. It's like, well, no one taught me, so I can't do it. And in fact, I'm actually breaking more, and I'm even more screwed up. And right, what was the point of this journey? The point of this journey is that's actually not true. If you would see the director's notes on the side of the script, this is all intentional. This is all how we're setting the scene. This is all the director wanted, every detail, because it's part of how this, you know how like a good movie or a good book, the whole point is the character's transformation. What makes it interesting is because you see them starting out like this, and by the end they've transformed. That's what make, if they haven't transformed, we're like, oh, yawn, I'm going to sleep. Right? The whole thing that's fascinating us is their challenges and how they meet them and what it brings out in them. And does it bring out, do they end up like becoming the hero? Do they end up becoming the villain? Like, who do they become? This stuff gets thrown at them, and it's like, wow. And then, oh, looking like Harry Potter, like you think Snape is the villain, but really he's the hero. That's like such a, that moment is the moment, by the way, that we're supposed to reach on Purim, of Ad lo Yada ben Baruch Mordechai le'aror Haman. Is Snape the worst awful villain, or was he all along protecting the light? You decide. Okay, so good, right? Okay, so now the reason I say this is because this is happening right now, that the Knanim, or the non-Jews, are giving us the tools that we lost as Am Yisrael, like meditation tools, like yoga tools that we actually taught them, right? I mean, I'm not saying that in an arrogant, like it was ours first, no, mine. I'm saying these were the wisdom teachings of Avraham Avinu, right? And they got given out to all the children, right? And we, through whatever happened in our Galut process, the Zohar says, we have all the book wisdom, and we have this indomitable, hard-hearted neck, which in this case is a good thing, this akshanut, right? This, I loved what Ayelet said about Pikud HaOref, right? a pikud means pkida, means to be air, awake, remembered, right? On, right? Like remembering that we have that strong neck, we can take it, right? We can take this yoke on us. We've got it for you, God, right? And we're kind of a bad ASS people, right? You throw stuff at us and we throw back, and like, right? And we also have got some mouth. I mean, we've got some chutzpah mouth, right? Good. Hashem likes a good little bicker, right? Because the makeup, is so yummy, right? Even with Hashem, Oh no. Okay, they're drilling on the other side of my wall. I hope you guys can still hear me. Ah! Okay. Okay, so there's this beautiful, I'm going to try to find the source this minute. Hold on, because I keep saying I'm going to give you guys the source. And it's so important. Okay, so okay, let's hear. So I really want to give you the exact source. Okay, I'm so sorry. Let me try one more minute. And it's such a beautiful source. But okay, I'm sorry, I'm not seeing it oh, here it is. Okay. Okay, here we go. Ready? So there's this amazing piece of Torah, and it talks about how there'll be a Knani. Oh, Hashem. Hold on. I don't want to drive everybody cuckoo bananas. Okay, well, okay, good. Okay, so what we're gonna okay. Wow. I guess I should just give Rivkah first. Okay, so I'll give a little tiny taste. So we're going to be talking about something called the seat of consciousness. Okay, so the seat of consciousness, sometimes we call it the Kisei HaKavod, right? Which gets translated as the throne of glory. Sometimes we call it the Even Hashti'ah, or the foundation stone. Sometimes we call it the pineal gland, like Pnei El, to see God. And sometimes we call it the city of Luz. And that's directly connected to the Luz bone. Okay, so already we know it's going to be connected to the secret of regeneration, of Triyat HaMetim, the secret of knowing how to die, and understanding that when you're dying, you're actually not dying, you are transitioning. You're going through a rite of passage, right? Just like there's many rites of passage on this side of the equation. The city of Luz is a bridge that helps you connect to these two different lives, so to speak, or these two different chapters of your own unfolding. I know I'm saying a lot of super esoteric stuff. I'm just putting it in the space, and then we're going to slow it way down. Okay. Now, and really what it is it's gaining access to your own true self, and God, as God dwells within you. So whether you're in this body, or you're leaving this body, or you're in another body, or you're entering a body, that's all stuff happening on the world of Asiya, or the world of form. But inside, nothing is happening. You're with God when you're before this body. You're with God when you're in this body. You're with God as you're transitioning out of this body. You're with God as you enter the next body, right? And if you can access that air, that well of consciousness, that you will be able to calm and take care of your own fear parts, your own scared children, your own parts that this is the first time they're going through this process and they're terrified and they're freaking out and they're hearing sirens, right? There were just 3 sirens in Tzfat this morning, right? Okay. And the thing is, we've all been really scared since we're little. Where's the grown-up in the situation, right? Sometimes we thought the grown-up were our parents. Sometimes we thought the grown-ups were our teachers. Sometimes we thought the grown-ups is God, right? But God is like this thing in the sky. Like, who's in charge here? Hello? Anybody here? Right? Like that little baby in the crib, right? And the beauty of awakening and enlightenment and awareness is you realize that you, the baby in the crib, have grown up and become the big enlightened vessel, and all the wisdom and answers are in you, not because you got them from your parents, although we do get lovely gifts from our parents, but it's bigger than that. It's more infinite and eternal. Sometimes in this lifetime, we know children are the ones being the elevated souls to their parents, right? So it's not bound by the outer story, but sometimes it is, right? And the death is this bridging into accepting and realizing you are the grown-up, right? You are the grown-up, not in a burdensome way, in a magical way that you yourself have grown wings. And you didn't realize, right? Because you still saw yourself as small and scared, right? Because those are parts, and they're parts that got stuck, you know, but the wink is, right, that here Rivkah and Eliezer recognize each other as these types of souls. They're sho'avot. They know how to dwell, how to source from true self. And therefore, even if I heard this, oh my gosh, it was so lovely, from Locke Kelly. If any of you know who Locke Kelly is, he's a wonderful teacher of meditation, mindfulness, again, a Knani, right? It's very intentional that he's a Knani, okay? Because this is where we're getting our wisdom teachings back from. And he said, one second. Okay, it ran away from my mind. It'll come back at the right moment, please, God. It's talking about being sho'avot, drawing. Okay, it'll come back. Okay, so the piece I wanted to mention is just that it says that in the days of Mashiach, which is right now, in other words, when we say Mashiach, remember, we're also talking about your own waking up, your own waking up into your true self. That's really what we mean. And then Mashiach helps us do this process. But the Geula is waking up to realize that God dwells in us as us, and that all of this wisdom has been planted in us. And it's not, you can't access it through the rational mind, and you can't but spiritually bypass it either. The only way to access it is to become it, is to know it, is to have the experience. And it says, well, we forgot how to do that. We as Jews, right? That's really what happened to Yisrael. We forgot, but what we did retain was the Kol Yisrael Aravim Bazeh consciousness. It's got a lot of klipa on top of it, right? But when push comes to shove, this is what Yosef revealed, that when push came to shove, the brothers did have each other's backs. They didn't initially, but as Mitzrayim energy intensified, they actually did have each other's back. And that was what Yosef saw and was like, oh, they're going to be okay. right? They act out, the parts get jealous, they even get murderous, but they fix that to enough of a degree that there's something pure inside of them that when it gets worse and worse, they're going to learn to have compassion on, first of all, within themselves, their own parts, right? And like those are all the brothers. You have those 12 tribes inside of you. You have Yosef inside of you. Okay. So all I wanted to say by this is it's Eliezer is a Knani. And again, it says that the Knanim will remember the wisdom teachings of how to show us where is the gateway to the city of Luz. Okay, so now in the physical body, the back of the neck, you feel a little indentation. That's the gateway to the city of Luz. Okay, in other words, it's the secret of the spacious, entering the spacious you that holds all of you, has compassion on all of you, has acceptance and compassionate patience and emunah, like belief in all of you, and witnesses all of you, and okay, that's good for now. Okay, let's second. Let me open the chat. Can't stay for long, but I saw them. Yay, wonderful. Okay. Okay, beautiful.
Reva, hi. I came late, so you might have mentioned this already, but who says that the Knanim are going to remember all the wisdom teachings?
Yeah, so I was looking to give you the source, and right now next to me, I have it in the Maharal, but I don't see where the Maharal is quoting it from. So I'm going to look at it and get back to you guys because I want to give you the exact quote.
Okay, great.
I think it's both a Medrash and a Zohar, but again, let me just, I'll look it up.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Okay. Shenishlah mikna'an lintso kala leben adono. So this is Eliezer, who was sent from Canaan in order to find the bride for his master's son, right? For Yitzchak. Davar echad haya yodea. He knew one thing. This is talking about Eliezer. Al hana'ara lehat'im lemishpachat shulcho. ופירוש הדבר שעליה להתאפיין באותן הכוונות כמו שלו. One thing he knows for sure, that this young maiden is the most essential vibe, energy, character trait, right? Presence that she needs to have is this quality of compassionate acceptance and desire to help all of her own parts, and therefore the all. Okay. L'shem kach, because it's the secret of how we elevate. It's the secret of becoming your own beautiful, divine inner parents, right? L'shem kach. So, in service of this, siman hazihui, shehu bikesh hayag milut chasadim. So because of this, he's like, well, how am I going to know if she really has that type of soul? And the answer is that if she's kind to his parts, there's a good chance that she's kind to her own parts because she's not filled with suspicion and fear and people are horrible. And right, the fact that she's coming open-hearted is a good sign that she's open-hearted and her heart is in a good, healthy space. And in terms of self-love and whole love, right? So beautiful. And by the way, right, when people start to get very wounded, a trauma response is to isolate, right? That's to go to not trust connection, right? The heart is not feeling present. And by the way, it's equally a trauma response, which I have had my whole life, to overgive, to overextend. That's not what we mean by an open heart. We mean a presence, right? There's nothing to prove. There's nothing to gain or give by giving anything. It's just the sheer presence and nature of loving presence, right? That's what we're talking about, right? Because over giving is because I don't know how to access self, and it's a bit of a traumatized, anxious style of connection, even though it has good intentions, right? We love those parts. Okay, good morning. Wow, beautiful. Okay. לשם כך, אוקיי, הצעה מנדבת ליבה של הנערה להשקות גם את גמליו. So this open-hearted, expansive heart energy that she had when offering to give him a drink and the camels a drink, right? בעולם מדברי גמילות חסדים קשורה מאוד בגמלים, right? And it says, in a desert situation, your water is so precious, right? It's not just like when you turn on a tap. It's not just giving water. It's giving a very precious, rare resource. And when you call this an olam hamidbari, a whole ecosystem who's dying for water, like chesed, love, compassion, connection, an elixir to make it come back to life, right? All the dead parts in us, all the numb parts, all the trauma parts, right? And she's like, right? לא הייתה זו רק תכונתו המובהקת של אדונו, מכניס האורחים ונודע אלא אף זו של אלוקיו, אותו אל עולם נעלם שברא את הכל. So he says we want to be careful here that what Eliezer was seeing, it wasn't just from the house of Avraham as a human that, okay, these are kind people. That's beautiful, right? These are giving, generous people. That's really beautiful, right? He says, no, but it was far more expansive than that. It was, this is the God that I want to be in connection with. Because people give over their vision of God, and they give over an idolatrous vision that God is horrible and angry and mean and punishing and scary and will send you to hell, and right? And he says, no, it's more than just these are nice people. This is the God that I believe in. This is the God that I see behind the curtains. In other words, this to me is the one primal energy that truly brings healing. To know that you're seen and not judged, to know that you're seen and held in compassion, right? To know that you'll be helped if you made mistakes instead of judged and shamed. To know that there's resources, energies that want to support you, that have your best interests, that you can trust. He says, yeah, that God, that's my master's God, and that's my God. And that's a God that I'm going to dedicate my life force to watering, right? In myself and in others. Okay, one sec. Okay. המושלם שאינו צריך לקבל דבר, כל מהותו היא נתינה. And he says, you know what else this quality of my God has? My God is so full into herself, unto himself, that my God isn't in relationship with me to take, to get any. My God doesn't need, my God wants connection with me if I want connection. But my God is not these old gods where I have to offer, my first child, God forbid, right? Through fire in order because it likes human blood, and it likes suffering, and it likes loss. No, right? But people didn't know. right? We didn't know. She says, my God, the chief quality of my God is an expansive, loving presence that is always in the service of kindness and wholeness and healing. Now, it doesn't mean every outer story, again, like the surgeon cutting someone to, taking out all their guts, that sure doesn't look kind, but it is kind. It's essential kindness because it's restoring the person to life. That's the biggest kindness, right? To a better quality of life, right? So this is a quality that Hashem has, that Hashem always wants things to be better for us, right? It's always an unfolding of more presence, more love, more healing, right? And the real way we get that is not by being weakened and dependent by God, but by God putting his greatest gift, which is himself, inside of us. So we always have access, right? If we so choose. Okay. Question. Somebody, no. Ha'isha ha'nichenet בתכונה זו ראויה להעביר את לפיד האמונה בו לדור הבא. He says, so the feminine that has this energy, that's the energy mat'in for Yitzchak, because that's the world that we want to build. That's that community we want to build. That's the humanity that we want to build, right? That's the vision of a humanity that has inner peace, where every being has a sense of inner worth, an inner value, an inner peace, an inner holding. And therefore, they're not always reacting from trauma parts, which will change the face of the world. Right? You have a question? No. Okay. V'hinei, kamayim hapanim lepanim, ken lev adam la'adam. Right? This is one of my favorites. This is from Mishlei, from Proverbs from Shlomo Melech, Kaf Zayin 27, Yud Tet 19. And it says, V'hinei, in other words, and this is a true spiritual principle. V'hinei, here is a principle. Kamayim, just like in the physical world, the nature of water is that the energy is reflective. In other words, if you meet it with kindness, it mirrors kindness. If you meet it with distrust, it mirrors distrust. If you meet it with parts, it mirrors parts, right? It says, Ken lev adam le'adam. So too are human hearts resonant in the same way that water is reflective. So my heart might be a mirror and your heart is a mirror, right? It's both a mirror. Remember the Sohar in the Teva, the little window at the top of the ark? And Rashi says, well, it's either a Sohar that's a precious gem, or it's a window that lets the light in and out. And we conclude, that means it's both. In other words, it has a quality on the level of the yachid or the individual, right? Which is to be like a precious gem, that it's self-generating. And it has the quality that from the self-generation, it waters and shares consciousness with all the other parts. Yeah? You okay? Okay. גל החסד שהביא עמו אליעזר לחרן שב אליו מיד בדמות נערה שמילאה בדיוק את מבוקשו. Now this is so beautiful. Okay, he says like this. Eliezer himself brought the presence, the energy from within his being of loving kindness, of loving presence. And therefore, it like saying out to Rivkah's soul, right? That heart's energies are reflective, and her soul, it was like, right? I've been searching for my true love. That's what happened, right? And right, this and and this energy called each other, it's called one to the other, right? So beautiful. And it says, and so you remember Eliezer put out this tefillah, this prayer, and it was a very unselfish prayer, right? It wasn't a give me prayer. It was my master's vision is to create a world community of souls who will go through the rigorous Jedi, get it? Yehudi, Jedi, haha, training, right? Yodea, anybody? Yeah, right? Go through this rigorous training to nourish and access their own be'er, their own self, right? God as God dwells within them. And then water any other soul who's thirsty, not to make a tlut, not to make the person dependent on my well for watering, but that my well gives them the strength to find their own well inside of them and water that well, and so on and so forth, right? This is the Be'er Miriam that we're talking about, obviously, right? This is the well that the stone, right, was covering over when Yaakov sees Rachel. Okay, it's always the same imagery, and it's always the imagery that there's an orla, or there's something covering over the flow. There's something covering over access to true self, to infinite self-love and self-acceptance and God love and the God acceptance, because it's the same thing, and other love and other. There's something, we want it and we don't know, right? It's like, like everyone wants to love themselves. We just don't know how to do it. Everyone wants to accept themselves. Everyone wants to have infinite wisdom and trust their own intuition and nevuah and prophecy, right? But something's covering over the well, right? So that's something covering the well. We call that orla, right? And we have an orla on the hair, like at the upsharon, right? So we have an orla over the mental body. Moshe Rabbeinu had agal sfatayim, right? So he had a level of orla that he was working on the whole quality of speech and communication and singing and words and word vibrations, right? And Yaakov Avinu is, working on it, and Miriam Hanevi'ah are working on it, and Moshe Rabbeinu, sorry, I can just keep going, because it's all the rock and the water, the rock and the water, get it? The rock and the water. The rock is the orla, right? And the water is this ever-flowing spring of consciousness, right? Of self becoming self, eheyeh sher eheyeh, right? In the individual, I'm becoming I, you're becoming you, and then the collective of Hashem saying, ekeh asher ekeh, it's all me anyway. It's all me, God becoming me, right? But the main quality that God is looking for in God's soulmate, because that's us, is that we'll be a good mommy to the little parts, right? You know how like a man looks for like a good mommy for his children? Kuchabrihu looks for a good mommy, a good Shechina, like who is going to help my little parts grow into this consciousness of having access to their be'er, right? So beautiful. And here comes Rivkah, and she's like the poster child, right? Yay. Okay. So Eliezer amad mishta'eh. Im lo nevi'ahi, harei shekoach nevi'ah ba. It says, it's a play on words. So Eliezer is like, what am I seeing here? What am I seeing here, right? This is her whole presence is just filled with the divine presence that she offers to her own parts. Yeah. And right. And the loving, her energy of this loving kindness. And he says, well, if she's not a nevi'ah, i.e. with an Aleph, a prophetess, she's certainly a nevi'ah with an ayin, a source of of flow. Novea means to flow, right? You have a question? Okay. Okay.
That's awesome. What you just said.
Oh,
A nev
yeah,
a
isn't that so
nevi
beautiful?
a nevi'ah
Right.
and invoa. Wow,
Nachon.
thank you
Isn't
for
that
that.
so beautiful? Yeah, that's from Reva Menussi. Yeah. And okay. שכוח נביאה, with an עין, כוח נביאה בה, כוח התגברות ובקיאה לפני השטח. He says, and this, she has this loving kindness bubbling in her and nourishing her and connecting her to God and God as God dwells in her, and also bubbling forth through her. And this bubbling forth through her, it says what it does is it has the power to open new pathways in all that is dark and stuck. Isn't that lovely? It says, Koach hitgabrut ubeki'ah lifnei hashatach. This is the power to open pathways where there's not pathways, and the power to overcome obstacles in its path by actually being loving and kind over the obstacles, like just right, a huge boulder in the way, and it's like, that's okay, we'll just wash over the boulder because she's water, right? It's so beautiful. El hana'ara hazu hitpalel. This is the feminine that he had prayed about, that he had prayed for, right? For to be the match for Yitzchak. Shma haya Rivkah. So her name was Rivkah. V'chazal himshilu ota l'shoshana bein hachokachim. And the holy masters say that, right, this pasuk that we began with from Shir Shirim, from the Song of Songs, kishoshana bein hachachim, like rose amongst the thorns, right? This is referring to Rivkah, and not just, right, because they say that her family, because she was a soul who was born into a family of people who were relationshiping on very high levels of toxicity and dysfunctionality, right? There was a lot of stealing, there was murder, there was manipulation, there was triangulating, there was suspicion, there was trickery, right? Those qualities that we call right, wounded attachment, right? And here is Rivkah, and by all accounts, she shouldn't have access to her own inner light and inner well, because from trauma, from attachment theory, she certainly didn't get it from her parents and her brothers, right? And that's the point. She is the infinite, youthful, all ages, bubbling well of true self that is amongst the thorns, right? She is the untouched flower. She's this part, she's true self that holds loving kindness always, even if the world comes and says, why are you such a friar? Why are you such, and she's, okay, so she's the source of that. She's the well of this energy. Perach adin hamukef kotsim dukranim. She's a gentle flower, right? In other words, this is a soul that is gentle and is kind, and yet is thrown into Olam Asiya with souls that are very abrasive and harsh and aggressive and coarse in their qualities, in their movement, in their speech, in their action, in their beliefs, and how they treat people, and right? בתוך יסימון של עלילות וכפירה, היא הייתה נווה מדבר של טוב וחסד. Okay, right, again, we kind of said this already. HaTorah meta'eret ota kebat betuel ha'arami. It says the Torah is very intentional in telling us her lineage, that she's the daughter of Betuel, the Aramite or the Arami, from the word arum. Remember, who does that sound like? The Nahash, the snake, right? The snake was arum. It means he was naked, but it means he was manipulative. He was crooked. And then Adam and Chava, remember, they looked down after eating from the Eitz Hadat Tov V'Ra, and they realized that they're arumim, that they have this naked quality. It's not talking about naked on the level of body or not body. It did get blended with that later, but it's an energy called arum, arumiyut, also with an ayin, right? It's a play on words. Arum with an aleph, as in naked, but arum with an ayin, it's talking about here, one second, like crookedness. Hold on, I'll give you the source. אחות לבן הארמי בראשית כ"ה כ' לפי חז"ל, החזרה המשולשת אל מוצאה הרחוק ארמי, ארם, ארמי, באה ללמדנו שלמרות שאביה, אחיה וכל אנשי מקומה היו רמאים בחילוף אותיות, היא הייתה tzaddiket emet. Okay, so he says it's also saying that the word Arami, Aleph Resh, Mem Yud, if you switch the letters, you get Ramaim, sneaky, manipulative, crooked behaviors, right? Trickers, right? Bait and switch people. They're, in other words, what is it lacking? Honesty, yashrus, yashar, to be straight, to be above board, to be transparent, to be truthful. Right, the motivations are clear. It's not having always selfish and self-seeking agendas underneath, right? Mevin kol ha'im, and also we want to just, right, notice, so she's coming from energies of aromimiyut, trickery, and she's going to have coming out from her Yisrael Yashar, Yoshut, right? The energy that's face-to-face connection, that's honoring, that's respectful, that's loving, that's fair, that's harmonious, that's balanced, right? So beautiful. Miben kol ha'imahot, from amongst all of the four mothers, but four like F-O-R-E, right? The ancestral mothers, the three ancestral mothers, although if we include Bilhah and Zilpah also, ve'ulai kol hanashim b'chumash, and maybe even amongst all of the women of the whole 5 books of Torah, ma'afniya muvhak shel Rivkah hu heyota ba'alat tshuva. It says this is the first feminine who is called a ba'alat tshuva. In other words, she was born into energies that were going a certain direction. She was nursed by energies that were going in a certain direction. She was, right, born into a consciousness that was very dark, like the worst of human nature. And yet her soul managed to switch paths and find the path back to her own true light, right? To God as God dwells within her, to the path of righteousness, to the path of harmony and, right, true self, all the qualities of true self, right? Compassion and acceptance towards all the parts, curiosity towards all the parts, creativity, clarity, courage, confidence, connection. Okay. Isha hamegi'a el olam kedusha mi bachutz. Right? She says this is a soul. This is the first time that the feminine is finding the light within itself, although it didn't receive it from the outside, right? That's why she's going to be the poster child for true self that's not dependent on having gotten it from a healthy outer attachment system, right? Like healthy parents or a healthy family or healthy children or a healthy spouse or a healthy therapist or a healthy Rebbe or right? Those are all beautiful when we have it. And yet there's something that we need encoded in us that even if that's not and has never and will never come in the olam of Asiya in an outer form, we have it encoded within us. We're not dependent on Moshe Rabbeinu on the outside. Can you hear that this is the fixing of the Egel Hazahav? We're not dependent on the outer teacher, the outer Rebbe, the outer spouse. It's lovely because we want more connection down here. But our Yeshua, our healing, our wholeness, our access to light, our access to God is not dependent on anything from the outside. Not that you've got a yeshiva education. In fact, sometimes it can be really hard to undo an education that, was beautiful Torot, but mixed in with people's own unhealed trauma parts, right? So we were just passing the traumas to the next generation. That's okay. We didn't know better, right? Okay, so it says she has a quality, this Rivkah energy, which again, we all have inside of us, right? This Rivkah energy is the energy that she has access to inner goodness, wholeness, kindness, integrity, beautiful, a desire and an ability for beautiful connection, even though she's never known it in this world, in this body yet, right? And even maybe she never will, but in her case, she does with Yitzchak, okay? בעוד יצחק הוא דור שני ליהדות, וככזה בבחינת צדיק לכתחילה, רבקה הצטרפה למסע היהודי מתוך בחירה המבוססת על חוש כי זהו מקומה. Okay, so it says, Yitzchak is the example of being born into a healthy attachment system. For example, Avraham had already he'd already been circumcised. He'd already done the Brit Milah. So in other words, he already had removed the Orla from himself as a father, right? So more his coarser, rougher, harsher parts got healed, right? And elevated and transformed before. So, you have a family and there's like 14 kids, and the father and the mother of the first kids are not the same father and mother that the last kids are getting, right? Because the father and mother have had their own and hopefully own elevation. So the later kids are getting a parent with less and less Orla, hopefully, right? So this is the case with Yitzchak. Yitzchak, right, and we can have more compassion, I think, maybe on Yishmael, because I think we should look in the text. I think Yishmael was conceived before Avraham did the bris on himself, which means that Yisrael also absorbed more of Avraham's own poison, more of his unhealed parts, more of his unrectified chesed energy. And that's what Yishmael is, chesed energy that's holding more unhealed parts around it, as opposed to Esav, that's din energy that's holding more unhealed parts around it. Okay.
Doctors alert as we get continued reaction to the news that King Charles III has been diagnosed with cancer.
Yeah. Okay, sorry. I thought that was a question for me. That was just somebody watching the news, I think. those of you on the recording. Okay. נקודת המוצא שלו היא החושך של המציאות ומתוכה הוא נתפס אל האור. Okay, he says, so this place of like Rivkah's soul, right? Or now he's talking about really the soul of any Baal Tshuva, right? And let's not say it like the movement, the Baal Tshuva movement. It's much more nuanced and profound than that. It's one who masters that their energies have been conceived in a certain energy, watered and nourished in a certain energy, grown in a certain energy, and yet there's something that's so deep within them, within their true self, that goes looking for higher truth. Again, it's very hard to put this into words because these are a lot of words that a lot of very unhealthy systems use these same words to talk about finding truth and whatever. So it's hard that we're sharing the same language, right? But by truth here again, we mean those qualities of true self, right? Of being able to offer compassionate presence to all of our own parts and compassionate acceptance to all of our own parts and compassionate listening to all of our own parts. It doesn't mean we don't have outer behaviors to bring more into alignment or integrity or righteous living. They don't contradict each other. It's the deep knowing that the more patient and encouraging and compassionate we are to that which is not yet healed or balanced or matured or integrated within us, it gets strength to keep going and to do better by being held in compassionate acceptance rather than harsh shame and judgment and criticism, which we might think could scare us into growing or scare us into aligning, but often it just scares us nekuda and gets the energy stuck there. Okay. כעלות מי הבאר לקראת רבקה. Okay, so he says it's interesting that her own neshama journey is mirrored back to her and us as her own self came to offer loving, kind, compassionate acceptance to herself and help her step into this journey of knowing God, within her, knowing true self within her. And he says that is mirrored to us as she comes to the Be'er, as she comes to true self, the waters rise up to greet her. Okay, in other words, it's this lovely resonant that she's in search of true self, and therefore true self reveals itself to her. And true self is just as equally searching for her, for a vessel, for an opening, for a human being who's listening, who's wanting. Okay. תנועה זו מלמטה למעלה מזוהה בקבלה כתנועה נקבית. So this movement from the vessel towards the light, from the feminine towards the masculine, from below to above. Good morning. This movement is called a feminine movement in the language of Kabbalah. And what we mean by that is when the lesser party, in terms of levels of consciousness, like the baby cries for the mommy, that's an Isarusa delatata. That's a movement from below, yay, from below to above, right? When a human being prays, when we dive into Hashem, again, it's called an itaruta delatata. It's a bid for connection that's coming from the vessel side, right? Coming from the recipient side, the feminine side. The body telling us that we have a little tightness in our shoulder. Again, that's an itaruta delatata. That's the body making a bid for us to give it a little rub or to say, hey, why are you holding tension there? What do you want to say? What's going on, right? That's called an itaruta delatata. Okay, a bid for connection, a desire to connect that's coming from the side of the feminine, but not just feminine as in the woman, right? But we might say the side of the vessel, the side of the material, the side of that which supposedly has younger or less consciousness, the side of it's interesting because if we would even put it in the level of the language of brains, we might even say it's like the left brain reaching to the right brain and saying, come teach me, come give me some of your right brain stuff, right? Okay, hope you got that. בבעל תשובה, בין אם גבר או אישה, יש משהו נשי. It says, in any soul that is returning to its true self, to its true roots, right? To, now again, it has layers of culturally returning, but we're saying something that's far deeper and higher and bigger than just a cultural return to, you know, let's say to being Jewish or even to following Torah and mitzvot. It's even much bigger than that, right? It's talking about any soul finding its way back to its true nature, its true self, to experiencing itself as God dwelling in this body and in this being. He says, so any soul that undergoes this process is called a feminine soul, whether it's a man in this lifetime or a woman in this lifetime. This soul is called a feminine soul because it's creating a container, a space to for God to dwell within it, for connection. It's asking for the connection. It's wanting the connection. בהתיישבו למרגלות הצדיקים בבקשה לשתות את תורתם, הוא מתדמה לאישה החפצה להיפקד זרע. And here he says something so beautiful. He says, the soul who's wanting wisdom about itself, its own nature, how to access and return home to itself, that soul, he says, is exactly what happens within a woman when she's asking from her husband to impregnate her, right? That she's wanting this gift. She's wanting this connection. She's wanting to receive a part of him and to help that part grow into a fuller, more beautiful expression of itself, right? Wow, it's so beautiful. Ba'alat tshuva hi ifui isha nashit b'miuchad. It says that the dmut or the soul that's called a Baal Tshuva, right? In other words, one who has stepped very, very far away from alignment with self and has gotten very lost and maybe very broken and maybe very shamed and maybe very diminished. And worst of all, maybe very judgmental, critical, and punishing of itself, right? Its own parts. That soul is called a very feminine soul. And we know this because the poster child of the Baal Tshuva is Malchus Beis David, right? Yehuda, who is from the left side, that is the feminine side, it's Hod, right? And David HaMelech, right? Who is Malchut. Hope that was enough for now. Im ha'em harishona Sarah hayta mishoresh Chava harishona, if the first mother, if the first experience of divine feminine energy was Sarah, then she came from the root system of Chava Rishona, right? Of Chava number one, right? The very first emanation of the energy of the divine feminine. Hamashpia al ba'ala milemala, and her quality of Chava Rishona and of Sarah is the feminine energy that shines down a quality of compassionate love and acceptance towards the masculine, and at the same time this quality of emunah, of seeing the most beautiful wholeness in him, seeing his own wholeness and inner true self. And because she has that, she shines it to him, and it awakens his true self within him, right? And this is how the movement goes, that she holds loving acceptance and compassion and belief in, right? Emunah, her all of her own parts, and therefore she's giving out that vibration, and therefore it calls to him, right? That he can receive a healing from that place. Like, he's going to have to do his own work. Please, we don't want to be like imbalanced in what this looks like, right? He has his own work and his own soul story. She can't rescue him, but the fact that she is compassionate towards her own parts and is accepting towards her own parts and keeps offering love, even as she's also working with them to elevate and show up with more presence and light, it affects him in the most beautiful and healing way. And that's called a mashpia milamala lemata, right? One who is helping another soul by holding a higher vibration and a higher energy, and therefore watering a suffering soul, a soul that's still suffering and stuck in a lot of fear-based, judgmental, critical, hating, resentful parts. Okay, so far so good. הרי שהשנייה, רבקה אמנו, היא משורש חווה השנייה, שחייה עומדים בסימן עלייה מלמטה. Okay, it says, so, but with Rivkah Emeinu, she is slightly different from Sarah in terms of how they relationship with the masculine. So the whole example we just gave, that's Sarah to Avraham. But the way Rivkah relates to Yitzhak, it says, Hi mishoresh chava shniya. She comes from the soul root of chava shniya, right, of second chava. Shechayeha omdim besiman aliyah milamata. That this is talking about the feminine waters that go through getting disconnected from true self, right? She starts on the scene and she's totally holding this true self, but get disconnected from true self, and the journey of lemata lemala. Her, right, she's saying here, this is really profound, that the energy of Rivkah and Reva, these are energies of the feminine that comes into the world surrounded by a lot of souls who are stuck in a lot of darkness and pain and suffering and crookedness and disconnection from true self and disconnection from their hearts. So the family trees and the family systems could be holding a lot of pain and a lot of poison. And she goes through this process of finding her way to the light through all the darkness, Keshoshana ben hachochim, right? And accessing for everybody the indestructible inner whole soul that never gets wounded, right? And that's her offering, right? Of holding, like it's almost like Rabbi Nachman's like Ve'esheli tukad ad biat Mashiach, right? It's very Malchus based David energy, that the inner light, the inner goodness, no matter what is happening on the outside, it is never going to be destroyed. There's always going to be a return to the belief in the elevation of humanity, in the goodness of life, in the goodness of people, in the goodness of Hashem, right? And that this is the direction of her soul, right? Milamata lemala. Really profound. Okay, sorry. Ach למרות שבעל התשובה ישוב למרגלות הצדיק, בעומק הדברים שורשו נעלה משלו. מקום שבעלי תשובה עומדים, צדיקים גמורים אינם עומדים. סוד מעלתו של בעל התשובה טמון בכך שהוא לוקח את כוחות הנפש הארצית, זו השקועה בענייני עולם הזה, ושעד תשובתו היה כולו שקוע בה, ומרים אותם למעלה. Okay, so he says, this is the energy of souls that are very trapped in the most earthy energies, such as life and death, survival, right? Right? Just think of all the energies that Rivkah was surrounded by, right? Like a system that teaches you that manipulation is the only way to get ahead in the world, right? A system that teaches you that it's a dog-eat-dog world, right? A system that teaches you to pretend to be something on the outside, right? In order to get your needs met. And we have a system inside of us. These are the protectors, the managers, right? The firefighters. And Rivkah meets all these parts, right? She grows up with them. She knows these parts like the back of her hand because she's of them, right? And yet she's not of them. She's also been the flame protector of the inner purity, the inner part that no matter how many times it's hurt, left, abandoned, let down, wounded by itself or by others, still springs back to life and to light and knows and believes that Hashem is essential goodness and life is essential goodness. And every person has essential true self in them that may be covered over by a few parts or may be covered over by many, many, many parts. Okay? Mishtamesh bahem la'avodat Hashem. And she becomes a master of knowing how to help all of these parts find their way home, right? All of these most earthy energies, and they can be the energies that other people can be very scared of, right? That they can be very deep passion, they can be suicidal parts, they can be very manipulative parts, stealing parts, and the flip side of that, shame parts, right? But here when we talk about love arami, we're really talking about the energy of ramaim, right? Of human beings playing other human beings taking advantage of other human beings. And Rivkah comes into the world completely in a world where it's not only okay, but we're taught that the only way to survive is to take advantage of other parts, take advantage of other beings to get ahead, whether it's, again, stealing from them or just telling a lie about them or going behind their back or pretending and again, Rivkah has enough self to have compassion for those parts. She's gotten enough away from this ecosystem to know that it's not true that you need to live from that system, but also she has compassion because she understands how Lavan came to believe that and how Batuel came to believe that, right? She watches and she's witnessing where they live from and she gets it, right? זה בדיוק מה שעושה רבקה. סיפוריה מעידים עליה כי היא נכנעה בחושים הבריאים ביותר להבנת העולם הזה, החומריים שמהם הוא עשוי והנפשות הפעולות בו, והשתמשה בידע הזה הן כדי להעלות מעולם ניצוצות והן כדי להשכין בתוכו אורות. Okay, it says, so this, the amazing quality of her soul is that she's not sweet and in center from a protective part, right? She knows darkness. She knows what human beings are capable of. She's not pretending that human beings are perfect and whole and won't hurt her. She is very astute. She's very aware to what places the parts can go. And at the same time, she has had her own journey of elevating through those parts and coming back to connection with true whole self. And therefore, she offers those parts the most acceptance and compassion. And she goes into the darkness to retrieve those parts that have gotten the most stuck in the belief systems of the need to manipulate, the need to use others, the need to harm oneself, the need to play with darkness. I know these parts in myself. I don't know where they come from, but they're my Rivkah parts, because that's also my Hebrew name. The parts of me that are just fascinated with the darkness in other people till I'm terrified, right? But I'll keep going. I'll keep wanting to know these parts of darkness and play and dance on the edge with the darkness, and there's something thrilling about darkness to me. And there's something thrilling about dancing on the edge of darkness. And, years and years ago, I dated someone and he once said to me like, oh, so you like the bad boys. And I was like, yeah, parts of me do. Yeah, there are parts of me who do, that are fascinated by souls that are dancing in darkness. And that's good. This is Rivkah. She comes from the darkness. So of course she's fascinated by it. And she comes from the darkness and yet has a quality that she's always weaving her way back to the wholeness of light and dark. I don't want to just say light, the wholeness. She's always weaving herself back into it. There's a wholeness here. Lavan is a part that got very polarized. Batuel is a part that got very polarized, right? Okay. And I'm sure that's my family because I'm sure they're worried about the sirens. Oh man, okay, I'll call them soon. Okay. So you understand? So she has this ability, right, to understand the minds, the qualities, the parts that say you won't survive this world without manipulation, without crookedness, without grabbing what you want, without forcing and pushing the sha'ah to get what you want and get your vision met and your needs met, right? Because that's what she learned, right? That's the way you get what you want in the world. And yet she also has this wholeness, this system in her that when she's in wholeness knows that everything is already sourced for her from within her. And she can not only access that, but she can water other souls with that knowledge and that wisdom. Mamad הגבורה של בעל התשובה הממנפת, אולי, אותו אל מעל הצדיק. She says, okay, so what is the quality of a soul that has danced in darkness and has come out the other side? We're calling that a Baal Tshuva, as opposed to a tzaddik that has been protected from certain experiences and certain amount of shvirat kelim, right? Their kelim, the kelim of tzaddikim in general break to a much less degree, right? Maybe they get like a little crack, maybe, right? But when we're talking about the Baal Tshuva, they know what it is to shatter their own vessels, and they know what it is to have their vessels shattered. But by vessels, I mean, they know, like David HaMelech, remember, he pretended that he was mentally ill, right? It's not that he's pretending, it's that the Torah is telling us that parts of him really did believe they were mentally ill, but there was a higher self and awareness that knew that his soul is indestructible, right? But it says, so there, he's not, now we're not just talking about the terms that we use this, like a Baal Tshuva or tzaddik, someone who grew up from or didn't grow up from. It's that, but it's much deeper than that. It's talking about souls that the majority of their life, they stay and they're held and protected in certain levels of wholeness of self, of purity, of tohar, right? And then there are souls that go to the pits of hell even while they're still alive, right? They go into unbelievable levels of experiencing their own darkness and the darkness of other beings. And by darkness, again, we mean manipulation, cruelty, hatred, revenge, violence, aggression, dishonesty, right? Betrayal, all of those energies, stealing, we know all those energies, right? And to be preyed upon and to prey upon all of those energies. And says that's this quality of a Baal Tshuva that does this dance of darkness and then comes with all those experiences back to wholeness, back to their true self, back to their essential self. And then all the souls that they help heal and help find their way home in this process. That's a more Rivkah process. And he's saying, and that's more a Baal Tshuva process as opposed to the tzaddik process. Now, you'll notice right away that it's so beautiful that Am Yisrael is being created by a database of these two souls. Yitzchak, that came from Tikkun Habrit, right? That Avram Avinu had been circumcised and he had been prayed into the world. And right, in other words, he's so wanted and he's a miracle story and he's held in like the highest energies of love between a man and a woman and a family and a desire for family. And he's prayed into the world, right? We mentioned that, but I'm saying it again because it's almost like a quality of a soul that feels beloved by God and beloved by their parents and held in support from before it's even been embodied, and then contrast that, right, with a different type of a soul. And here he's calling it the Baal Tshuva soul, or Rivkah Emeinu, right, for right now, that is a soul that was not born into those circumstances, that was born into an ecosystem and a family of distrust and pain and toxicity and secrecy. There's a lot of secrecy and shame and blame, and it's kind of a dangerous ecosystem, right, for all the parts, and yet is a light bearer, right, and is incredibly fierce in its love. So such a beautiful right, contradictory statement, but okay, and these later are going to become the energies of Yosef and David, right? Yosef is the tzaddik and David is the Baal Tshuva. Yosef is the one who doesn't step out of alignment, and therefore could very well look down on the other parts and judge them and criticize them and ask them why, they're doing these dark and inappropriate things, right? And David HaMelech and Malchut Beit David, that is willing to undergo breaking and shame and humiliation and self-destruction, which is not a good quality, but it's still one of the fierce qualities that Malchus Beit David has, right? All for the sake of love for the suffering souls, right? And will even be willing to have their experiences so that they can meet in resonance and they can say, oh, okay, I know this map and I can actually get you out of here. I've been to this part of hell before and I know the way out, and I'm going to show you. Okay. Mekupal b'dimui hashoshana mukefet achochim. This is in this type of a soul, this Baal Tshuva type of a soul, this Malchus Beis David type of soul, this fierce warrior, lover type of soul, is called a Shoshana Bein HaChochim, right? That's why we're called Yehudim, by the way, right? From Hod, from Yehudah, from this line, from this energy, that we don't give up on true self, ever. We don't give up on any soul coming back and knowing true self. We don't give up on any part. We don't give up on any part having its tikkun, its healing, its elevation, and knowing that the tikkunim don't have to be harsh and violent. We don't have to hit the rock, right? We didn't know that initially. Okay. Al panav nir'eh hadimui kemadgish et hanigud ben hanitzotz לקליפה, על רקע החשוך מורגשת ביתר שאת בהירותה של נקודת האור. It says, okay, at first glance, we might think that what we're talking about is a system of contrast. If you place something dark, very light, right, it'll pop out by contrast, and hafuch, or the opposite. If you shine light where there's something very, very, very dark, then that light looks even brighter. He's saying, is that what we mean when we're saying Kishoshana ben HaChochim, that Rivkah was like this beautiful rose because she was surrounded by thorns, right? It says, but לפי החסידות, הדימוי בא ללמדנו גם על זיקה בין השניים. This is okay, but through the teachings of Chassidut, it's not polarized. It's the interplay and the interconnection of parts and self and parts, darkness and light and darkness. It's not one or the other. It's not a battle of light against darkness. right? That's not Rivkah. That's not Rivkah energy. שושנים אינן פורחות רק למרות החוכים המקיפין אותם, אלא גם בזכותם. Listen to this line. This is the most important line to heal my soul, your soul, all of our souls. Okay? Our perception of our enemies, our perception of the people who have wronged us the most in the world, harmed us the most in the world, shown up in our lives as chochim, as thorns, right? He says, there's one way of looking at the story that there's a very delicate, gentle, beautiful light that unfortunately got surrounded by very aggressive, violent, coarse, not trustworthy, critical, judgmental, whatever, souls or parts, right? But a more geula understanding and teaching is deeper and higher than that. And that's that the rose would never be the beautiful rose that it is, were it not for the thorns that were both encouraging it to grow and protecting it and keeping it safe. The irony. This is what we're moving to in Adar when we're going to say that we're going to lose our old consciousness, right? Chayav inush libasume adelo yada, until we have a new consciousness that we understand. It's not so simple to say Baruch Mordechai and Aror Haman, that it's clear to me that these souls were my friends and these souls were my enemies. These souls benefited me and these souls harmed me. No, there's a level that we get higher and higher and more in real awareness, and we wake up and we see more and more the real truth that a soul can hurt you in this world and actually either have not had any consciousness that they were doing that, or have been intentionally placed there by Hashem to help you grow, refine, polish, sandpaper a certain media of yours, right? Even break you l'shem shamayim. It's a horrible concept, but it's a true concept, right? Like a really strict teacher that really knows, like imagine like a mefaked in the army that knows that you're really going to be facing real life challenges. So they push you to your limits, they break you, they hurt you, they call you names, they shame you. But really it's because they are so wanting you to succeed. It's weird, right? And it's ironic, but they're pushing you so that the best comes out from you, right? That your highest good comes out from you. Hakotzim shomrim alehen. And then there's this, right, crazy realization that this is the adalot yada, that the things that you thought were your enemies and the thorns and the situations and the stories and the souls that hurt you the most, betrayed you the most, ad kedei kach, this is a crazy Torah, but the inner holy masters teach that Lavan is called Lavan because actually the energy on the level of the inside light, not what it looks like in the physical world, right? We're talking on the level of souls right now and soul intention. They're called Lavan because they're the purest, highest souls that are willing to hurt other souls in order to help them grow. Because on the level of souls, they have enough awareness to know that in Olam Asiyah, in the physical world, it's going to cause suffering. And yet, there's some system that says, I'm willing to even go through that. I'm willing to put my children through that. I'm willing to play that role in the play. Like I'll be Haman in the play, even though I would much rather be the beautiful Esther fairy princess. Who wouldn't, right? And that these are some of the bravest, most courageous souls. Because again, in the system of IFS, we would call them parentified children, maybe, right? Or we might call them manager parts that work really, really, really hard to help us grow and to keep us safe and to, right? They're not just like klipot, they're also really, really doing their best to try to get us through and help us to stay alive and survive. When they get liberated from those burdens and from those distortions, we would call it a klipa, or the chotzim, seen as something bad, we get liberated into the fact that that's actually the system that has been protecting the rose and helping her to, let's say, be a plant that is so amendable, so adaptable that it can survive in many different climates, right? It can survive, like the thorns helped it build up an inner strength, right? That it's like a ninja now. It's like a ninja flower. Okay. מזכירים להם כל הזמן מה הן לא, ומה הן אמורות להיות. Okay, he says, the kotsim are these protectors or these souls that look like they're against us, or they don't love us, or they're thwarting our growth, or they reject us, or they shame us. He says, yeah, it looks like that. And the way they will often do this as parts within IFS or internal family systems work is these are the parts that will remind us all the time of what we didn't do and how we're not enough and what we're supposed to be and what we're not and how we failed, right? So now he's saying these parts called chochim, called thorns, they exist inside around our own inner Shoshana and flower, and they will come to us also in the outer ecosystem as thorns, right? As voices, situations, relationships, stories that will poke us like thorns, right? That will point out where we're not healed, where we're not okay, where we're not enough, and what we should be instead, right? החיכוך התמידי עמם לא רק מגונן על עדינותן, אלא גם מעניק להם חוסן פנימי מפני חילולה. לכן כאשר נקטפת השושנה ונטעת מחדש בסביבתה הקדושה, הקוצים מתלויים אליה. הם חלק בלתי נפרד ממנה, חוט טיל של קשיות ותוקף המהוות בבואה ארצית של כתר איל עליה. Now he says, it's so beautiful. I hope I can give this over right, but he says, when this beautiful rose gets transplanted to its new ecosystem, right? And again, that's what we're saying, that death is nothing other than being transplanted into a new ecosystem. That's what happens at death. Literally Hashem taking the plant out of the dirt, taking the soul out of the body, and it's going to be replanted into a new ecosystem, right? When it's replanted into the same dirt body, we call that Triat HaMetim. And when it's replanted into a different ecosystem body, we call that a Gilgul, right? But it's simply a replanting happening. There's nothing being lost or gained. the plant is being taken out of the dirt so that it has a new ecosystem and can open and grow and elevate and heal. And right, although the plants get very scared when we pull them out of the dirt because they don't know, right? So we have to remind the plant, oh, okay, that's right. And then he goes on and he says, and they have managed to be nourished by the qualities of the strength of all of these kotzim, all the situations, all the people, all the stories that they thought broke them. They've managed to see now how it was building their muscles, building their inner fortitude, building resilience, building deeper trust in true self, really, right? Even though it didn't look like that on the outside. And okay, hold on. תוקפה של רבקה מגולם בלשון שבה היא מוצגת לראשונה בסיפור. It says, okay, so this journey, this process of Rivkah, in this following language, it's going to tell us this, okay? והנה רבקה יוצאת בראשית כ"ד ט"ו, זהו ביטוי ייחודי שלא נאמר על האימהות האחרות, ולפי ספר הזוהר הוא מגלם את תמצית חייה. It says, okay, so when it says in Bereshit kaf-dalet tetvav, in Genesis 24:15, והנה רבקה יוצאת, and here Rivkah is setting out, going out, set, okay? By the way, just so we have something to anchor this, the word set, Tzadik Aleph, of course, is the gematria or the numerical sound vibration equivalent of 91, right? Tzadik is 90 and Aleph is 191. Well, that happens to be the same gematria as Yud He Vav He and Shem Adnut Aleph Daled Nun Yud when they're in Yihud, when they're interpenetrated, when they're in B'Sha'at Zivud, right? That's also the same number. Yud Ke Vav Ke is 26, and whatever 91 minus 26 is the Shem Adnut. Okay, and it's the same gematria, or again, the same sound vibration, the same resonance, the same frequency as Sukkah, right? Sam is 60, Vav is 6, Kaf is 20, and Hey is 5, right? And again, getting 91. It's again the same gematria as the word Emunah. Amen, slicha, amen, right? We have the nun is 50 and the mem is 40, that's 90 plus the aleph, again, 91, right? So now just to start to receive into our bodies the wisdom teachings that this frequency called 91, called Tzadik Aleph, right? Se, to go out, is going to have all of these qualities of a sukkah. And by the way, 91, the Tehillim of 91, Yoshev Besetel Elyon Betzel Shakai Yitlonen, right, is the Holy Masters teach that, again, that's the Tehillim number 91. It's code again for 90. And that Tehillim was what Moshe Rabbeinu would recite when facing the darkest parts of himself, right, on the inside, on the outside, in his journey to God, inside and outside, right? This Tehillim, number 91, holds the spiritual energy vibration of being able to see, move the parts, right? Move the clouds to get to the light. Have compassion on the parts, have compassion on the clouds, not hit the rock, but be able to see beyond the stories of the parts that, the parts that have fear, the parts that call us names, the parts that judge, the parts that are afraid, the parts that kill and murder, the parts that rage, the parts that act out, the parts that, manipulate, all of that. Tehillim Tzadik Aleph has the quality for self to call self and for the parts to step aside. Really beautiful. Okay, let's just finish this little part. So it says, so she's called Hine Rivkah Yotzet. She's like, she becomes in service of this awakening of consciousness, waking up, called Yotzet, to go out from the lies, to go out from the dimion, to go out from the matrix, to go out from the world of Lavan energy and in this world, and Betuel energy in this world, and to go beyond that system, the system of prey and predator, the system of victim perpetrator, right? She's Yotzet. She's like, no, I am looking for the higher system, the more integrated, whole, compassionate system. Okay. זהו ביטוי ייחודי שלא נאמר על אמות אחרות, ולפי ספר הזוהר הוא מגלם את תמצית חייה. And according to the Zohar, this one line encapsulates her soul. והנה רבקה יוצאת. הזוהר מפרשו כאומר שהיא יוצאת מכללה, יוצאת מהכלל יחסית לסובבים אותה. Okay, so one thing that it means is it's saying that she stands out, or she's different from the other souls in her ecosystem, right? And that she makes it out. This is a part of soul that is so fierce in its love for light and for life and for connection and for all that's good in the world, that she climbs, crawls, claws, breaks free out from the deepest, darkest ecosystems of pain, and then goes back to help them. Okay. Yotzet min galuta, that she, Rivkah, is this part of soul that does get geula, that breaks free from her own darkness, from her own dark roots, from her own dark past, from the people in her life that she believes have given her darkness or interacted with her in darkness. She gets freed from all those stories, inside, outside. Yotzet mehagalut, that Rivkah, hine Rivkah yotzet, means this is the soul energy and quality of getting free of all the stories that of the pain of life and the pain of humanity, and she makes it to the other side. Break on through to the other side. Break on through. Yeah, doors. Anybody? Okay, shout out to Victor Shapiro. Turned me on to the Doors at age 15. Okay. וכן יוצאת באופן של ויצא כברק חיצו. And it says there's another reference to her in Zechariah, Perek Tet 9, and Pasuk Yudaled 14, and it says v'yotzeh kebarak chitzo, like a flash of lightning that like pierces. It's like this. It's light that pierces through the darkness. Guess what? Instantaneously. And lights up everything, and the truth of the nature of everything is instantly revealed. It says this is the power of Rivkah. הביטוי מצטרף לאמירה חזקה נוספת, הבוקעת מפיה של רבקה עצמה. And this image of her, that she's yotzet, she's the light that goes, slices through all the dark and the sheker, right? And finds its way home and helps all the other souls lost in darkness find their way home. It says, we know this even from something that she herself spoke. כאשר היא נשאלת, הtilchi עם האיש הזה, when her family, when the stuck dark parts are asking her, Are you going to go with this guy? Are you going to go with Eliezer? In other words, are you going to set out on the journey back to your own true self, back to the love amongst all people, love amongst all humanity, love amongst God and people? Like, are you really? Like, okay. And that's from Bereshit Kaf Daled and Nun Chet. Genesis 24:58. He meshiva b'mila nichretzet achad elech. Listen to what a bad she is, okay? Right? All the parts are saying, you really believe that you can get free from these pain stories, from these dark, from the whole history of our whole family, inside, outside, the inner ecosystem, the outer, you're really going to set off on this journey? And she answers with one word, Elech. I'm going. I'm going to keep going. I'm keeping on going. I'm keeping on keeping on. I'm stepping to the flow and then I let it go. Rivkah היא דמות של גיבורה הפורצת מקבליה. It says Rivkah is an image of a mighty warrior who breaks the irons and the chains that bind her. Woo! I'm loving this. מורדת במסגרתה ויוצאת לדרך משל עצמה. She's got this, don't we know this? This rebellious nature of anything keeping her small, anything keeping her down, anything getting in the way of light and love and full expression and the deepest, fullest, widest, right, expression of life. She's like, no. Yay. And she is independent and she has to find her own way and forge her own way. Okay, wow, it's really strong. Okay, we'll just finish this teeny paragraph so we'll finish the noseh. Motiv merkazi bidmuta shel Rivkah. So a reoccurring central motif in this energy of Rivkah, hakishor af hu betnuat hatshuva v'hitgabruut hanaa milamata lemala hu hatfilah. It says, and where we see this the most with her, that she has this forceful energy of movement back towards light, back towards life, back towards wholeness, is and the movement from below, meaning to be stuck in the lowest energies and the most painful, shaming, diminishing, humanly ugly circumstances and stories, and go that her tnu'ah is always milamata lemala, right? That her tnu'ah is always from pain, darkness, struggle, lack of love, right? All those energies, and to keep breaking off the chains of that. And it says we see this the most in her koach tefillah, that she uses the energy of the kivun, of the beautiful intention, to almost speak through a birthing pathway for her true self, for all the parts to come home. So beautiful. Okay, we'll just finish here. Rivkah noladet b'sha'at tfilato shel Avraham lezivug avor bano. It says, when was she born, say the holy masters? What was happening when her soul came into her body? At that very minute, Avraham was praying for a zivug for his son. How do we know? Because at the end of Parashat Vayera, right when he gets off of the Akedah, and all of a sudden we're told that Yitzchak is 37 years old, and Avraham has this awareness, wow, he could have died on the Akedah, not being married and not having had children. I better find him a shidduch, right? And then the next sentence is telling us that Betuel has a daughter and her name is Rivkah. Right, so the holy masters say, do you understand that at that very moment when Avraham was petitioning Hashem for the right zivug for Yitzchak, at that very minute, Rivkah took on her mission and entered her body and came into the world. That's the type of soul she is. מתגלה על הבאר בשעת תפילת אליעזר. And so what we learn, what we see, what's revealed to us at this well, at the time of Eliezer's tefillah, is that she's doing the same thing, right? The first time Abraham gave the tefillah for the true soulmate of Yitzchak, her soul entered her body. And now, again, when Eliezer is making the same tefillah for the true soulmate for Yitzchak, she hears it like energetically, and she comes to the Be'er. She shows up, ready for my mission. ומגיעה לארץ ישראל בשעת תפילתו של יצחק. And she comes into Eretz Yisrael at the very minute that Yitzchak is out in the field, and he's also now calling her. You understand? First, Abraham called her in, and her soul came into her body. Then Eliezer called her in, and she met him at the Be'er. And the final one is that Yitzchak goes out into the field, and he calls her in. And at that very minute, she appears on the Gamal. She falls off the Gamal, but right, okay. This is how tuned in her soul is. בשלושת המקרים הללו היא מופיעה באופן של והיה טרם יקראו ואני אענה. In all of these circumstances, she's the instantaneous answer to someone else's tefillah of wanting to grow, wanting a vessel, wanting to elevate, right? It doesn't even take time. It says terem. It's immediate, right? Abraham says, please send the right woman for Yitzchak. Boom, Rivkah's born. Eliezer says, please send the right, wife for Yitzchak, my master's son. Boom, Rivkah comes into the surface. Yitzchak himself goes out into the field and says, please send me my soulmate. Boom, there she is. עוד הם מדברים ואני אשמע. They haven't even finished speaking, and I've already answered them. That's from Yeshayahu, Samech He Kaf Dalet. Mashal hayta חלק מהתפילה עצמה ולא המענה לה. בהמשך, ילדיה שלה לומדים בזכות תפילת משותפת שלה ושל יצחק. מסיבות אלו נושא התפילה יעמוד בלב ההתבוננות שלנו בדמותה של רבקה. Okay, so we'll end this part for today. He says, and this is why, it says, right, that a central theme in her life is that she's the answer to other people's prayers. Listen to how deep that is. When a soul is in distress and is asking Shamayim for help, she's the one that shows up. She's the answer. She's the instantaneous answer to other people's prayers. Okay, and we're going to see more, maybe please God tomorrow. Questions, answers. Anybody want to do a tefillah bracha? It's a lot to take in, right? Whoosh, someone's picking me up in 23 minutes. Okay, if we don't have a tefillah bracha, then I'm gonna go eat, gonna go water my vessel. Yeah? Okay, so wait, the first thing I have to do is remember.
Are you still there? She's gone.